Sit.
Today we are here to remember Mr. N.J.Yasaswy, fondly remembered or called as N.J.Y. He is the founder of the ICFAI Group. To celebrate this occasion, may I call upon the stage our Senior Director, Dr. Ajay Pathak. Presiding over this occasion is Ms.Vishaka Saraf. We are very, very grateful to her. Suffering from high temperature. Yesterday when I spoke to her, she could hardly speak, but she said, "No ma'am, I will be there, don't worry." An extra loud hand for and delivering the N.J. Memorial Lecture this evening is an eminent personality, Mr.Dhurba Mukherjee, CEO ABP. Mr. Mukherjee. Mr. N.J.Y. lived for just 60 years, but he accomplished so many milestones that it is difficult to enumerate them all. Over the years, many have paid tribute to him, but personally, one comment I really thought expressed the essence of the man. The comment was, Mr. N.J.Y. could overcome the tyranny of the or and could make beauty of and possible. His vision was academic and entrepreneur. Not academic or entrepreneur. Expresses the essence of the person, I think. He strongly believed in the power of the market and thus could challenge the age-old system with his vision and a deep sense of egalitarian principles. He believed in the rigor of the system which could transform an ordinary student into an extraordinary achiever. He knew that his students will be the testament of the model he was propagating, and therefore he stressed on system, rigor, pedagogy. He never intended to be a time teller whose mastery would go away with him, but he wanted to be a clock builder whose legacy of teaching anybody would tell time would linger on. He always said that the chair I am sitting on, the day I feel I have outlived this chair, I will no longer sit on it. On a day in October 2011, he got up from that chair and went into hospital. Unfortunately, never to occupy that chair again. In his memory, the ICFAI Group has instituted the N.J.Y. Memorial Lecture to be delivered at every ICFAI every year. We missed out 2 years because of the COVID, but for the 9th N.J.Y. Memorial Lecture today, we have a person, I was just saying, we have someone whose background reads like a who's who of all times. Mr. Dhurba Mukherjee, a graduate from St. Xavier's St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, an MBA from ISWBM, is also an alumnus from the London School of Economics and Political Science and from Harvard Business School. He joined the Anandabazar Group, or the ABP as it is known now, in 1997 and is currently the CEO of the print, radio and online business of the group. A very reserved person, he does not like to come in the limelight, and it has needed many years of requests till he has finally agreed to come and attend an event of ours. And Mr. Mukherjee, we are immensely grateful that a person of your stature is here today to deliver the 9th N.J.Yasaswy Memorial Lecture. May I request one of the students to kindly greet Mr. Mukherjee with a floral token. Presiding over this function, we have another eminent lady, and I'm very glad it is a lady. I think it shows our split of students also. Vishaka Saraf is partner, Deloitte Touche Tomatsu, India. She has over 17 years of experience in transfer pricing. She is actively involved in advising her clients on intangibles from a TP lens. She is part of the Deloitte Global Documentation Board and leads the Asia Pacific Initiative on global TP compliance and documentation. She has worked in UK and the US, and she has a great sense of humor. When I asked for her profile, what she has written is that she is interested in music and she is usually called to sing when parties need to be broken up. So, Vishaka, we are so happy to have you here to preside over this function. May I request Priya to please greet Vishaka with a small floral token. And Vishaka, a token for our senior director. May I request our senior director to please kindly deliver the inaugural address.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Mr.Dhurba Mukherjee, CEO, ABP Group, our chief guest, Vishaka Saraf, partner, Deloitte India, president of the event, the guests, dignitaries, faculty, staff, students, and alumni members. I, on behalf of ICFAI Business School, Kolkata, welcome you all to the 9th N.J.Yasaswy Memorial Lecture on India and the world. An interesting topic indeed for each of us present today. It was on 8th October 2011 that Shri N.J.Yasaswy, our doyen, our visionary and charismatic leader, passed away. A shock when I received the message that day is still fresh in my mind. Shri Nanduri Jyoti Rajalakshmi Yasaswy, popularly known as NJY, has many outstanding qualities. He possesses the scintillating record of being the gold medalist in every exam he wrote, from BCom to Chartered and Cost Accounting, Intermediate and Final Examination. His retort to ordinary folks who played down intellectual achievements was a gold medal may be a myth, but the brain behind it is a reality. A statement which resonates whenever nepotism and influence peddling have been given preference over merit. At the All India Chartered Accountancy Students Conference in Chennai, he took the conference by storm, as during the question answer session to the qualified chartered accountants, he revealed an excellent group of the company's grasp of the Companies Act and showed how some of the loopholes could be set right. His knowledge of Income Tax Act was extremely good, and he continued to offer advices to companies and individuals besides lecturing at IIM Ahmedabad. In March 1972, Nani Palkhiwala addressed a public meeting on the review of the central budget in Madras. Nani Palkhiwala's budget speech were claimed to be the highly analytical and scholarly. People listened to him in rapt attention. After Palkhiwala's talk was over, NJY met him along with his friend and greeted him. NJY first began his conversation with him by asking a few doubts for clarification, and it gradually turned into NJY presenting his analysis on the budget. It was then Palkhiwala's turn to remain a listener to NJY, appreciating his approach to budget review, which Palkhiwala later acknowledged as excellent as well as unique. He suggested that NJY might give budget speeches after finishing his CA course. Winning Nani Palkhiwala's appreciation was a wonderful achievement for young NJY. He was hardly 22 years old. He left for USA for doing his PhD. But he immediately decided to come back within 2 weeks after attending classes. The reason? I already know what they are teaching. I have better things to do rather than pursuing my PhD. Apparently, it seemed that he was stung with the entrepreneurship bug. Mr. Yasaswy was appointed by the government of Andhra Pradesh as Chairman, Andhra Pradesh State Trading Corporation and Vice Chairman, Public Enterprise Management Board. He was a member of the SEBI Committee on Accounting Standards, also a member of the Board of Directors of the Association of Certified International Investment Analysts, Switzerland. He authored books on finance and investment. He had a rare quality to inspire many ordinary students to have a vision and work towards the same. He was an outstanding debater at the intercollegiate level in English and Telugu. He pioneered the development of higher education in the private sector while establishing new benchmark in academic standards by setting up the Institute of Chartered Financial Analysts of India, ICFAI, in 1985 after his stint with the Administrative Staff College at Hyderabad, combining his sense of duty to the nation with his innate passion towards higher education. He felt that ICFAI would help fill a void in the field of financial expertise. He created an institution to educate New India in financial management in its true spirit. In 1995, he built ICFAI Business School at 6 centers, and in 2000 he started building ICFAI University. By 2011, he aggressively set up 11 ICFAI universities with 5 universities in Northeast, an area where nobody would dare to venture. In fact, Durga Madam has already said that he met Abdul Kalam there in the flight, and he said something should be done for about the Northeast, and that's what he thought about Northeast. I was wondering why he didn't open a university in Guwahati, in Assam, which has 70% of population of Northeast states. Then I realized that he wanted to uplift higher education in states like Tripura, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Sikkim, which has significant tribal population. He had a tremendous capacity to take risks, but always launched every initiative with an amazing clarity. And I quote, "Ours is a private effort with a public purpose." NJY being an erudite leader, whenever a new initiative was undertaken, he would invariably emphasize to his colleagues, and I quote, "We are aiming at a future beyond our ken and control. Let us therefore be open to learn and steer through cautiously." He always took obstacles as opportunities. NJY always liked to experiment with new ideas and plans in business. He detested the practice of sticking to one business and plod on the beaten track. He always used to think differently. I first met NJY in 2001 when he was interviewing me for appointment as a faculty member. The brightness in his eyes, the clarity in his thought while speaking was clearly visible. He asked me, "Are you willing to teach and be a part of the institution building and take ICFAI to a higher level?" Though I said yes, I was not very sure. I was wondering why he was asking me about institution building. Later on, I realized what he meant. He said these words in one of the meetings, and I quote, "The dean of the institute will be a non-academic person, non-academic background." He further clarified by saying the person, of course, should have a brilliant academic background and strong appreciation for the role to be played by academics. The person should be more than an academic leader with a vision and capabilities to build an institution. What he meant 21 years earlier is quite clear when we saw the exponential growth of ICFAI. We were always keen to listen to him. He used to say, "Have wild and silly thoughts and you would be able to innovate and achieve whatever you want to do." I personally had several occasions to interact with him. Whenever I sent a mail to him, he would reply immediately despite his busy schedule. He goaded me into completing my PhD, but sadly he was not there when I was awarded the degree. He was a genius who lived years ahead of his time. This was due to his intellectual endowments as also his clarity of thinking. His vision will continue to guide us for years and decades to come. We all need to work with absolute sincerity, commitment and tolerance to achieve his vision and carry his dreams forward. I can continue to speak about NJY endlessly, but I would not like to come between you and Mr.Dhurba Mukherjee, our chief guest, for a very interesting topic he's going to delve upon. Vishaka Saraf, president of the event, is also there with us and will all love to listen to her. I once again welcome you all to the memorial lecture and hope that you will have a great intellectually stimulating afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pathak. It is always innovating to listen to somebody who actually knew NJY personally. Before we start the official proceedings, may I ask my student council president and vice president to please come up and pay a floral tribute to Mr. NJY. Student President Rick Cha, Student Vice President Amrita. Thank you. May I request Vishaka to kindly come and deliver the presidential address.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sinha. So at the onset, I'd like to thank Dr. Pathak for having me over today. It's such an honor, and it's so nice to see all of you all here. Deloitte and ICFAI, we've had a long association. I think we come to your campus practically every year, and we have some of our brightest team members from your college. So it's something I really look forward to every year, doing the interviews, and I think some of you all were interviewed by me this year. And I'm really looking forward to having you all join my team. The other thing, I asked Mrs. Sinha, what do I speak about today? And she said, just speak for 10 minutes. So I was like, okay. So I'll just speak for 10 minutes. And then I thought, why not talk to you all about what corporate life is about? And what are the things you need to keep thinking about when you're at the brink of your career, you want to start working. How is it different from the life you've led and what college life has been about? So I thought I'd just pick on my learnings over the last few years and just share some of our experiences and what I tell juniors, people who come from college who join my team. So before I start, I like to say this, and this is just a quote, that don't ever confuse the two, your life or your work. The second is only a part of the first. So work is just a part of your life. And my senior told me when I joined, Vishaka, you need to work hard, but you're not saving lives. So you don't have to be stressed about it. Enjoy your life, enjoy your work, and the success will come. The other thing which I've learned, and you know what happens in consulting, and you'll hear this from your seniors as well. You start working, in 2 years somebody else will come with a 30% hike. And you'll say, oh God, I'm getting a 30% hike, let me switch. Then you switch, and then you switch, and then you switch. Because you're running behind something, you're running behind money. But what you lose in the bargain is knowledge. And I personally, based on my experience and what I tell my juniors as well, focus on the knowledge. The money will come automatically. So one of the things you will have to focus on when you join any corporate, whether you join Deloitte or any other big four or any of the corporates, is focus on your knowledge. Now again, knowledge is going to be very different from what you've been doing till now. Right? Now it's somebody comes, they teach you something, you're trained, you give you exams, and you're there. But once you join corporate, nobody's going to teach you anything. It's a little bit of a jungle, really. So it's your initiative. You need to do your learning. COVID, online, all of this has got several avenues to learn. You have online learnings, everything is available. But the onus lies with you, right? So you need to do your learning, you need to look for opportunities. You can't go back at the end of the year and say, you know what, I didn't get an opportunity to do this work, so you can't do this to me. You have to give me a good rating. It doesn't work like that. You have to find, you have to look opportunities, you have to build your own doors. Don't wait for it to come to you. So that's one of the things I keep telling my juniors. You need to be proactive. You need to do your own learning. You need to look out for knowledge. You need to learn. Learning happens your entire life. But initial few years, it's a very steep learning curve. And then you'll see success will automatically follow. Right? So that's something I wanted to share with you. That focus on your learning. And the learning will not be spoon-fed. You will have to do it. And you'll have to do your own learning, you have to be proactive with it, and you have to look out for opportunities. Sincerity, hard work is a given. I'm not from one of the tier 1 colleges. I am not, I haven't studied abroad. What got me to where I am is just sheer sincerity and hard work, okay? So a lot of us say, oh, you know, I'm not from an IIM, I'm not this, I'm not, it doesn't matter. What matters is the hard work and the sincerity and the way you work, okay? So that's again something you really need to work. I think in COVID, we all got used to Zoom, right? So we all get onto Zoom, we listen to a lecture, we take down our notes, we're not interacting with the person in our class. The same thing happened with us in Deloitte. My biggest challenge after COVID, if we're out of COVID, was to bring my team back to office. The worst learning or the picking up which happened was due to COVID, because I did not have my team in office. You know what was lacking? The human touch was lacking. Not from a senior to a junior, but a colleague to a colleague. Team bonding is absolutely essential when you get into corporate. Today, you know, someone in your team is unwell, they can't meet a deadline. You should be the team member picking that up or supporting that, because at some point of time when you need help, that person is going to be out there saving your back. So again, getting yourself to work, making friends, it's a brilliant atmosphere. It is not, I said it's a jungle, but it's a fun jungle, right? And I personally believe office place has to be fun. You have to have friends. So go out, make friends with your juniors, with your seniors, build that team bonding, because that's going to really help you in the long run. Again, one of the mantras, have fun, guys. Again, quote of something I believe in, you work very hard and you party harder. So please make friends, work, party harder, go out, have fun with your colleagues. And that's really important, because that keeps you motivated to come back the next day. You shouldn't get up in the morning and say, oh God, I have to go to work. It should be, wow, I need to get back to work because I've got this to do, I've got this to learn, and I'm going to go out here with my friends. The other things I would strongly suggest is pursue your hobbies. Once we get into work, it's not a place where I need to go, I need to be the best, I need to come, you know, I need to be on top on my performance. It doesn't work like that. You're going to burn yourself out. And we've had a lot of cases where kids like you all have got burnt out because you all are too focused on being your best, alright? So that's not how it works in corporate. So you need to pursue your hobbies. I'm a certified scuba diver. I take off 2 weeks in a year with my husband and my children, and I go do scuba diving. I'm just shut out to the world. I just do that. So you need to pursue your hobbies. You need to do things which give you happiness, because that's what's going to keep you going in the long run. Again, something my mentor, when I joined, told me that when you start working, it's not a sprint. You don't have to reach that 100-meter race and improve something. It's a marathon. You have your entire life to work. Take it easy, take it slow, pursue your hobbies, maintain a work-life balance. That does not mean you don't work. The key is work-life balance. But yeah, you need to do all of that. The other thing is, I find a lot of children, a lot of freshers who joined us during COVID, post-COVID, you know, unknowingly, there's a lot of mental health, a lot of stress on all of you all, okay? And I can say from experience, it's okay to talk about it, to take help when it comes to this. All of us are going through it, you're not alone. In Deloitte, we have a special group which helps people who are undergoing any kind of mental stress, you know, and they need help. So it's okay to take help, it's okay to go for therapy. We're all doing it. So, but don't stress yourself out. It's not worth it. Okay? It's okay. 1 year plus minus in your life, it doesn't matter. So these are just few things. I think it would be a little contrary to what you do in academics. You want to excel. It's a little contrary, but when you come into the corporate life, you need to give in your best. There's no doubt about it. You need to be sincere. If there is a deadline, I have to work till 11, I have to work till 11. You have to do that. But then again, you need to take a step back and say, I'm going to enjoy my corporate life. I'm going to make the best friends. In fact, one of your senior colleagues, she works with me very closely, and she introduced me to Mrs. Sinha. Her name is Trina. Both of us work very closely on some of the largest TP compliance projects in Deloitte. And this similar conversation we have, and both of us are leading a team of about 220, 230 people in Deloitte right now. Bulk of them sitting out of Calcutta. So this is exactly what we tell them. This is how we lead our life. This is what I can share as an experience with you. So all the very best, and yeah, that's all from me. And folks who are going to be joining Deloitte very soon, really looking forward to having you all as a part of my team. And for people who are aspiring to join us, be in touch, and we'd love to have, because we've had some very good relationships and experiences with the ICFAI Business School. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vishaka. After all, you know, ICFAI Business School is the flagship of the ICFAI Group, and we are very, very proud of our MBA students who are today, in fact, we pride ourselves in saying that there's hardly a company in India you go where you will not find somebody from IBS. And the very fact that you have told our students so many tips and so much that they can do to balance their work life, family life, personal life, I think Mr. N.J.Yasaswy would have appreciated the lecture. And now, on a much wider perspective, we invite Mr.Dhurba Mukherjee, India and the world. So we are today one of the largest powers in the world. He's going to deal with one aspect of it, and there's going to be a question and answer session after he finishes.
Just to avoid an accidental thing of reading out somebody else's speech. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sada, and my regards to Vishaka, Saraf, and Dr. Pathak. And of course, good afternoon, probably even now. Yeah, good afternoon, and a very good to all of you. It's an absolute privilege and honor, needless to say, to be here, to be invited to deliver such a prestigious memorial lecture. I would say Dr. N.J.Yasaswy, his professional years, his heydays was overlapping when we were growing and budding professionals. So we can only now look back and admire the visionary that he was. That I would say an absolute brilliant academic mind. The wealth of knowledge he had on finance and business, which is manifested by the numerous books he has kind of authored. And more importantly, what comes out from what we heard today, and if I kind of followed his life, is he was a man with a passion, but that passion was with a purpose. And that purpose was to spread the light of education in all parts of the country, and particularly in parts where the light does not shine. And I think we in India will look back at this man as somebody who's helped in building the knowledge society that we all live in. And I think we can safely say that he left this world in a better place than what he inherited. And today, as we stand here, through you, I pay a big tribute to this man for what he has done for the country. And it's only topical that the theme for this year's lecture has been India and the world. I have to say I'm a tad intimidated because, before I came here, I asked what have been the previous 8 lectures and who all have given. And when I went through the names and the topics that were discussed, I'm completely out of depth because the names were very illustrious and the topics were very deep and meaningful. Not to say this one is not, and I'm coming to that. But it's very intimidating to follow that act. But I was reassured by Professor Sina that most of you have not heard the last 8 lectures. So you may have heard 1 or 2. So I thought, I can get away with that. But after reaching here, I realized that the burden of expectation on this topic just made me more nervous than I was when I came in. Having said that, I would also say that this topic has a very wide ramification, and we had a few to and fro telephone calls and mail exchanges to understand what do I speak, because the Indian world pretty much covers everything under the sun in the context that we live in. And though I may have studied economics and I'm interested in it, but most of my life for the last 25 years has been in corporate and business. So to me, to pretend out here that I know a lot about economics and I'm in touch with it and kind of give you an economic landscape of India and the world will be a little, I would say, pretentious, which I don't want to go into. So I said, maybe I'll try and tackle it from a business and economy point of view, which is relevant from a corporate and from a student point of view. And we kind of agreed on that. And to begin with, I must also confess that this economic terms or economic related lectures can become very boring. At least I found most of them when I attended one, because when I sit there in the audience and I listen to them, I often end up asking myself, what has this got to do with me? I mean, this sounds like what the government has to do, what the state has to do, and institutions has to do, and somehow can't project myself as what I can do out here. So I was trying, while I was kind of formulating what I'll speak here today, is to figure out some way on how I can relate it to what's in it for you. Now, if you're awake till the time I reach there, then we will probably see if there is something you can figure out from there. If not, one of the things I can advise you, your phones are on silent mode, they're not switched off. So feel free to go into your Facebook and Instagram and do your updates or check updates. I always tell it to a batch of students when I speak, that if you find that's more meaningful, please do that. Use your time productively. Or I also advise them sometimes to put up an update, and in this case would be sitting at Rotary Sadan, listening to N.J.Yasaswy Memorial Lecture on India and the World, profound, exclamation mark. And trust me, you will get some 100, 200 likes, and nobody will ever come back and ask you what you heard and what you remembered, because this is not about movies or this is not something as interesting as that. So it's a very safe update to give. If you're into Instagram, create some reels. All I know is that in this place, Rotary Sadan, the biggest challenge is the connectivity is very poor. Whenever I've come, my phone doesn't work out here. So you can only create a few drafts and upload them when you go. So I've given you enough things to do while I try and attempt at this topic. I first thought I'll start from a lighter angle about, the best representation of India in the world is Bollywood. And if you kind of see now the amount of Bollywood actors who are having partners or spouses from the world, you will see where India and the world is going, right? So starting from Preeti Zinta to Radhika Apte to, there are 3, 4, 5 people, even Tapasi Pannu, her boyfriend is a national badminton player in Denmark. So you'll see that's India and world at play. And if you reverse it, world in India, then you'll see a lot of actresses or actors rather who have come into Bollywood now are of foreign origin, right? So Katrina Kaif, of course, we all know about her. We know about Sunny Leone, these are more bigger names. And then of course, of late we are hearing a lot about Jacqueline Fernandez, who came to act but has now got into a lot of other allegedly enterprising things and making the rounds of court every now and then. But that's world in India. So keep that perspective. Bollywood always is symbolic and representative of where India and the world dynamics are playing out. So moving on, I just come to India and world from an economic perspective. And nothing that I say will come as news to you, because these are read about in media or whichever media you may be following. You will come across these things, but it's important to set the context so that we can deliberate all this here. All these facts are in the public domain. Whether you look at World Bank data, Indian government data, these data are all there. I'm not going to bore you with data because there is no presentation out here. So I'm just going to talk about the summary of takeaways that you might like to keep in your mind. But before I get into that, my business mind, as I said, always tries to break down a topic into a SWOT analysis. So what I did with this topic was also, when I look at India and world, and being an Indian, I look at it from an Indian perspective. I will break it out into a strength, weakness, opportunity, threat from a country perspective and see where we play in that. So if I start with the strength, I think the biggest strength of India, we all know it's a bit of a motherhood now, but it's probably the biggest functioning democracies in the world. And no matter what be the discourse, no matter what be the arguments we may have or the political beliefs that we may have, the fact still remains that we are much better off as a democracy than many other countries and many other citizens in any other part of the world. So I think let's acknowledge the fact that it is a strength for the country and it will continue to be a strength for the country in any growth perspective. Democracy seems to work a little better than autocratism, kind of a system. There is no denying of the fact that India is also one of the largest economies in the world, and that's one of our biggest strengths. Today the world takes us seriously because we are one of the largest economies in this world. Recently you would have come across data that depending on what measurement parameter you take, whether you take the purchasing power parity or whether you take the nominal GDP, we are the 5th largest if we go by the nominal GDP. we just overtook, I think, UK economy. We are 5th largest in the world, and if you take the purchasing power parity, I am very surprised people don't talk about that much, but purchasing power parity is actually a more stronger, I would say, metrics, because it kind of adjusts the price impact, adjusts the inflation impact. And by purchasing power parity, we are the 3rd largest economy. You know, China and US is just ahead of us, but not including my media, and every media picked up the 5th largest bit, and the political discourse was all about you being the 5th largest economy. But we are. But whatever be the numbers, the fact is we are the 3rd largest economy, or 5th largest, depending on which way you look at it. Also, it's one of the fastest growing economies in the recent times, right? I mean, forget the COVID bit, forget a few things, blips like demonetization, etc. Those are realities. We are not running away from that. But average, even today, India is projected around 5 to 7 or 6 to 8, depending on which projections you take, growth of GDP in the years to come, which by far would still be one of the fastest growing economies in anywhere in the world. And these are, I would say, to me, the strengths of India, and these are not the only strengths, and I continue on my strengths. To me, the most interesting strength of India, and you represent very much that, is the demographic dividend opportunity. And that there's a window called demographic dividend opportunity window, which India has gotten in 2005 and is expected to stay till 2055. So 50 years is that span of demographic dividend opportunity window. And what is that? Which basically means that of your total population, people of the age group of 15 to 64, that's the official definition, 15 to 64, they form the majority of the population. So in India's case, it's almost going to be, it's around 58, 59 now. It's going to be at its peak 62%, I think, in 2030 or 2040. But from 2005 till about, say, 2055, India's population demographic, 14 to 64, will be about 60% of the population, which is a fabulous asset to have. I mean, no country can claim out that. India is in that, I mean, in the past, Japan has gone through that phase, and they're out of it now. But India is going through that and will continue, and that's very important for you guys for the next 30, 40 years. You will be a part of that demographic opportunity window. And why is that important? Sorry, I'll come to that a little later. But to me, that is one of our biggest strengths when I look at India and the world going forward in what we do. Needless to say, because of our sheer population, and even if you discount the poverty levels, even if you discount the per capita income, we are still a large market. There's no running away from the fact that India's market is one of the largest to offer. And that is one of the reasons why you have been reading that of late, despite global vulnerabilities, we have been resilient. COVID, or even before that, India has always been in an Asian crisis. Whatever, you go back in history, whenever the crisis hits the world, India has a far greater resilience to face and come out of that crisis, surely because of the size of the market that we have. Even if our players, business players, just target the domestic market of India, there is a huge opportunity to mine out of it. And a very technical point, but still a strength. India, those of us who have seen 1990s can relate to it, but India today has one of the largest holding of foreign exchange reserves compared to any country in the world. And that itself is a huge kind of, I would say, a moral boost for the government and for the country at large, the economy at large, that we are not vulnerable to foreign exchange crisis, at least as of now, despite the fluctuations we are seeing in the rupee. Moving on, the other strength that India is kind of building, though a long way to go, is the ease of doing business. And those of you who are a little data-minded, India is currently, I think, 63rd out of 190 countries in the ease of doing business. That may not sound very spectacular, but 6 years back we were somewhere in 150 or 160. So there's been a 79 places climb in the last 6 years in terms of ease of doing business in India. Though those of us live in India may still crib about it. We're making progress, probably not enough, but we're in the right direction, and I think that directional strength is why I'm putting it under the strength bucket for India. A very important thing from your perspective will be, your perspective will be the Indian talent, right? You are a part of that. Today, if you look at the global organization, Indian talent is helming the global leadership across various organizations. Of course, the poster boys are always talked about, Microsoft, Alphabet, all these people we all know about. But there are many, many companies, even at the middle and small levels, where Indian talent is leading the charge, and that's great. And also, what we're seeing again a trend building up, which is important, is Indian firms now going out and acquiring global firms. And that's happening a lot in the tech space. You may not be seeing big things happening in FMCG or consumer durable space, though Reliance, I think, of late have started moving ahead and buying companies across the thing. Tatas have done it, of course, first with Chorus and then with Jaguar and so on and so forth. But apart from that, there are a lot of these Indian companies used to be bought over. Now Indian companies are going out and buying, and that itself, again, directionally, I'm putting it under a strength. Now, these are a set of strengths. Then let's move towards what would be the weaknesses when I'm trying to consider India in the world. And yes, our economy is biggest, our economy is third, fifth, whatever, but our biggest weaknesses, our per capita incomes are still very, very low. And when you look at the performance of economy through the lens of per capita, and you have to, because you are a 1.4 billion strong population, you have to see what the population at large is at, in terms of their welfare state. Then you would see that we are struggling. We would be, as per the last World Bank data, ranked 128th or 145th, depending on, again, PPP or nominal GDP, amongst 193 companies. If I take an average, somewhere around 130, 135 out of 193 companies in terms of per capita income. And hence, the critics, when people were celebrating, we became the 5th largest economy and 3rd largest economy, the critics said, you crossed UK. And we are about a 3 trillion, 3.2 trillion or 3.4 trillion economy now. And UK is around 3.3 or something. And he said that UK does the same amount of output with half the population. And you with double the population just about crossed UK. So what are we celebrating here? Because when you divide that wealth across the population, your per capita rank goes down to 128th and 145th. So that is nothing to be proud about. So yes, we have grown, but probably we have not grown uniformly. We have not been able to grow to the level we need to in order to pull up people across the rank and file and make India truly a welfare state. And that is the reason why the next weakness that I'm going to talk about, which is the Human Development Index. And in that, India's rank is 132 out of 191. Now, what is Human Development Index? The factor of three factors are considered in that. One is your literacy levels, where I think we made some progress, though a lot of it is all about signing names rather than literacy in the spirit of it. I think it's more in letter. The second factor in that is life expectancy, sorry, not literacy, life expectancy and literacy combined, education, and standard of living as measured by per capita income. These are the three factors considered in the Human Development Index. So yes, there is a lot to be done on the education side, and there is a lot to be done on the per capita side, and that is why Human Development Index, a lot of people consider as a true measure of a state's progress, of the country's progress. I think in the India and the world scenario, we have a long way to go. We have to first come into the top 100 and then move up and see where we go from there. If you look at the GDP, again, those of you a little data oriented, I think it's important to understand that yes, we have a great GDP growth. We are one of the largest economies, but our GDP is primarily contributed by the services sector and not by the manufacturing sector. And normally the comparisons are with China, which is our closest competitor in every sense of the word. If you look at the manufacturing share of China to their GDP vis-a-vis manufacturing share of India, there's no comparison. We are, I think, 14-15%, and they are at a 50% or something. And services contribute for India's 50%. But services, as you know, and you know what services stand for, services typically tends to be urban-centric, and it's a little skill-based. So what that means is, when you have a large population, a lot of that population cannot participate in this particular sector, and hence the disparity will always come. Right? Whereas the manufacturing is a little, I would say, more wider in terms of the skills required. You need not always need high-skilled people on that. You do, but at various levels. But manufacturing-driven economies tend to, do a better distribution of wealth and have a better per capita income, because that participation is more wider than a services-led economy. There's nothing wrong. We're doing well, and we should build and keep, our strength on services. But I think India needs to start a lot on the manufacturing side if the complexion of the GDP and the complexion of our growth and complexion of our development is to change. The third very important area where we lag, we put as weakness compared to the world, is our domestic credit level, and which means loans and advances available to the business at large. Domestic credit levels compared to as a percentage of GDP is very, very low. I think that percentage is somewhere in the region of 40-50% as a percentage of GDP, whereas just to give you an illustration for China, it's 280%. So which basically means that availability of money in order to kind of invest in manufacturing-led activities or any capital-intensive activities, that availability is low. And hence, our ability to scale up, and we talk a lot about MSMEs and SMEs and all that. It's a great thing, but SMEs and MSMEs at some point needs to scale up. We can't always be very happy with the SME and MSME kind of a statement. But that scale up will happen only when they have access to credit along with other skills and resources. But to us, fundamentally, that has been a weak area and where India lags behind in the world. And as a kind of a related factor, there is something called gross capital formation, which is basically the investments that go into an economy. That also is very, very low because your ability to invest is low, and hence asset formation or investments are very, very low in the company, in the country, which also kind of, I would say, slows down the possibility or the rate of growth that we can have. And these are issues that we have. I've already mentioned about the inequality in India. You all know that 10% of the wealth is in the hands of 60% of people. And that disparity will always lead to some social tensions, will always lead to some political compulsions, and hence will in some direct or indirect way affect the growth momentum or growth policy of a company, of a country like India. And this is again where we will struggle when it comes to the world. Moving on to opportunities now, I just done the strength bit, I did the thing. Opportunities always flows from your strengths and weakness. And I think for us, if you've seen, this government is already taking a lot of steps towards that. Manufacturing is a very clear opportunity. And we're seeing a lot of emphasis on Make in India project. And all of these now, you can put a context to why these are being promoted. It's not just been Atmanirbhar and all that. Of course, that's the political packaging of it. But the importance is that you need to build manufacturing. And if you need to build manufacturing, then Making in India will, of course, be a very, very strong initiative in that front. And that's where India can move on. We already are doing very well, I would say, on the digital ecosystem, the Startup India projects and etc. I think last I read there are about 100 unicorns already in India, and then there are gazelles and cheetahs, which are like the next level to unicorn. So I think we are already there. We are doing well on the services, and we will keep building on that. And that is it's a strength, and we need to build on that. And very important, if Make in India or startup, etc., is to happen, then the availability of credit has to come in. So now when you read why RBI is playing with the interest rates or trying to generate or pushing banks to give out loans and at the same time control NPAs, you'll probably make a sense of the context of why this is happening, because credit availability needs to go up in this country if the manufacturing, if the growth momentum has to come. Moving on to the threats, we all have been reading in the past, in the recent times, about a possible recession. Even I think day before IMF chief went on record saying 1/3 of the global economy will be under recession in the next year. Jeff Bezos almost did a self-goal of a month back by saying to US consumers in a chat show, don't buy consumer durables, don't buy this thing. Though Amazon runs one of the biggest businesses in these sectors, because there is preserve cash because hard times are coming, and that actually send the markets in a flurry. But point is, there is no denying, given the geopolitical issues that we are facing with the war and various other issues that are coming in, that will come actually, I would say, grow in size after the winter, when the energy crisis fully hits the rest of the world. Not so much India, because we are still buying Russian oil at very cheap rates, but for the rest of the world, particularly Europe and US, may not be so much US, but definitely Europe will be under deeper trouble. But the fact remains is there is a recession lurking. It is a threat because we may be still somewhat insulated with the domestic market, but as I said, our current account deficit will go for a while because our exporters will find it difficult to export goods and services. Anyway, the CAD is going up, the current account deficit is going up, but exporters will find it tremendously difficult to export in recessionary markets, but we'll continue to import, and that will create a bit of balance of payment issues. That is one aspect of it. Again, the other aspect is recession is also an opportunity. It's always like in COVID, a lot of people say COVID was an opportunity for us to become smarter in the way we do our business. So any crisis is an opportunity. Recession for India is a lot of opportunity also because many people, to cut down costs, are going to look at offshoring, is going to look at outsourcing, and India can play, if they get their fundamentals right, can play a very, very, I would say, big game in that space. So that per se can also be an interesting opportunity. So we don't know it's a threat per se, macroeconomically it is a threat, but for India it may also be a threat or opportunity rather. There is no denying the fact we are seeing with Ukraine that geopolitical tensions always retard growth or retard your momentum. And we have very interesting neighbors around us who really knows this trick very well, and wherever, more than Pakistan because they are now anyway deeply troubled themselves, but China has always been playing this game, not just with India but with everybody. Is whenever their domestic economy is in crisis, they create a nationalism kind of a issue on the borders with whoever they share, and create instability, and that's how they rally around their own domestic population around the country and divert their attention from the domestic issues. And you're not surprised if you see China's so-called transgression into Indian borders have always been linked to their economy kind of been in trouble, whether 6 months back when they did the first one or now recently we've seen the kind of protests that happened around COVID in China. Though we really don't know what's happening inside there because it's very, very strong media censorship that's there. But one can understand things are not good, and whenever that happens, they will always create these border tensions so that they can rally around their population, and for that India will have to face. I don't think it'll ever get into a war kind of a situation, but it will be a nuisance value we'll have to live with, and Pakistan, when they get their act together, will also get into that. So these geopolitical tensions will continue. And these geopolitical tensions do divert attention, do divert resources, and will kind of take it. And so we'll have to manage that. So it's a threat, but I won't say it's a very, very significant one which will really halt our growth in the coming times. Also, I know all of us are living in the society that we do. We are seeing a lot of social tensions in the multicultural fabric of India. And I don't want to get into the politics of that, but the fact remains that any kind of social unrest in any part of the country, and they tend to spiral, will lead to kind of hamper your economic growth in some way or the other. Because these tensions lead to erosion of a lot of things. Business confidence, trust, etc. And you almost start kind of preserving, being on defensive rather than trying to do anything on your front foot. And I think that will something India has lived with, will live with. But I would say it's a manageable threat and nothing to get very serious. Having said that, there are economic threats. We all know we are talking a lot about inflation. RBI has, I think, done a reasonably good job in controlling the inflation. But given how the world economy performs, that inflation will come under a lot of pressure. And as I said, we are not insulated from the world. So inflation will continue to haunt us, and because of inflation, the monetary policy will continue to change. And the monetary policy, really becomes very strict. Then availability of credit, and hence all the things I said before will have a ripple effect. And now I come back to the demographic dividend point I made. It's a great thing for India, but yet we see that high unemployment level prevails, and that's simply because we have a fantastic workforce population, which is 14 to 64, but they are very unevenly distributed. They are distributed, in various pockets of India, which are very, very low growth or the low opportunities in those states and areas, and hence they cannot be gainfully employed. And as a result of which, even though we have a workforce, that workforce is not, as of now, optimally utilized, and hence you see high unemployment level. The theory states that if you have a demographic dividend like that, then government's job becomes easier because you have a less percentage of population who you need to take care of and support. The dependent population, which is below 14 years and above 64 years. the senior citizen. So he's a less dependent, I mean the more dependent population. If that percentage is low, government job is here, and because the main 14 to 64, who they consider are the earning group, can actually generate income and contribute to the economy and contribute to the growth, and government can also use the resources for powering that growth rather than taking care of social securities of these two below 14 and above 16. But in India it's not. That's simply because we have a workforce, but it's in all kinds of places and all kinds of skill levels, and because manufacturing is not there, they're not gainfully employed, and hence we are not as of now able to exploit that dividend. And hence, how India will play out in the world will depend a lot on how governments are able to, I think, generate and kind of trigger policies which will lead to skill development, which will lead to skill enhancement, which will lead to, I think, industries being built across the country in a more even way rather than being concentrated in regions. And that's something you and I, when we were students, we have realized if you're studying in Calcutta, you always felt the opportunities were lower compared to our friends who started in Bombay, Delhi or Bangalore. We felt, their opportunity to get a job is higher, and though we are an urban group, we are not even in the rural areas. But at urban level also we have seen this disparity in metro. And even now that perception persists. So that is the issue, that even though we may have a level of dividend, we may not be able to take everything out of it. Now, these more or less kind of, I would say, captures this, but then I just want to shift it to a different paradigm altogether, which is where I say, if you're still awake, what's in it for you? Come what may, the fact remains that India and the world will have an interplay. You will have foreign firms coming into India, you will have Indian firms going abroad. And hence, as a future talent, your job will be to navigate that journey. And what I mean by navigate the journey, and I will just pause here to introduce a concept called information asymmetry. Information asymmetry will sound very pompous, but basically means information gap in a very, very layman-ish. What I mean by that, let me illustrate by an example. Suppose you have a car which you have driven for 5 years, I don't know, 1 lakh, 50,000 kilometers, etc. After driving that car, you want to now sell it, right? And you go to the second-hand market and you put up that car for sale, and let's say you ask for a price of 1 lakh or whatever. Now there are buyers who are also looking for a second-hand car. But when a guy comes to buy that car and sees it's a 5-year-old car driven for 5 years, 1,50,000, he really doesn't know what is the exact state of that car. He's just seeing some data. But he's always in his mind thinking that is there more to it? Are there more technical issues with the car, damage with the car? It looks all okay, but is 1 lakh the fair price? I don't know. Should I pay or not pay? Just flip it for a moment that you just put up that car for sale and a buyer comes and says, no, I pay 75,000. You probably in your mind have a 1 lakh price. You won't say that you're not sure whether 75,000 is what you should accept or move on, right? And this corridor of uncertainty is what information asymmetry is, because both sides don't have complete information of the other side, and hence we dwell in this corridor of uncertainty. And this can be applicable in various other any kind of a transaction process. Now, if that is it, then who will you probably settle for? You will probably settle for a third-person intermediary who will assess the car, give an assessment value, and that will be more acceptable because that guy doesn't own the car and he is neither buying it. So he's giving an independent assessment, and that is where you see all these Maruti True Value, Spinny, all these kind of startups that are starting, which are in that independent assessment zone, facilitating a transaction, because you will be more likely to believe assessment of the value given by any of these, and both sides will kind of accept it. So these are intermediaries, and that's what and these are institutions which come out to kind of do that and kind of reduce that information asymmetry. So when the international play happens, when any company coming into India and vice versa, they always are looking and assessing the institutional voids that are there in the country, and that's very country specific. Broadly there are 3 markets when you look in business: it's the product market, the labor market, and the capital market. Now, when a company goes in, they normally try and assess that are there institutional voids in the product market, which is this whole gamut of marketing, which is advertising, research, etc. I mean, do we have enough data on the consumers, on the markets and such. Labor markets, of course, we all know what it is all about. And capital markets is all about investments, loans, banking system, and so on and so forth, all that. Now, are there institutions around it, who can kind of facilitate my entry and help me do business? Or this is a country where there are institutional voids in each of these, and hence information asymmetry presents. And that will kind of probably force you to think your strategies in a different way. I mean, you all did 4 Ps of marketing and you do financial strategy, but this is coming from a slightly more helicopter level, if I may call it, which is to figure out if there are information asymmetries and whether there are institutions helping you to solve that, or if they are not, then how do you fill up these institutional voids? And if you're a finance professional, probably you'll be concerned with the capital labor market. If you're a marketing professional, you'll be concerned with product and labor market. But the fact is, you will need to then decide what is your strategy to enter that market. And normally you've seen with most MNCs or people going out into other markets, the strategies are, one is to say, if I am an MNC entering a country, I replicate what I've done in other places. If the institutional voids are not there, it's a which is mostly there in developed markets. We in India, we still call ourselves a jugaad economy. But if institutional mechanism is very strong, the voids are not there, then you probably replicate what you've done in your markets, because you know that there won't be any institutional void which will detract you. Or you may say that, no, I don't know this market very well, there are voids, I will go in and adapt to that market. So yes, I will bring in some practices, but I will adapt the rest. And for paucity of time, I'll not get into detail, but when you look at examples of companies coming in, there are people either who have replicated this strategy or they have adapted this strategy. There are a lot of food chains who have ended up customizing Indian menus in their, although they came in, whether it's McDonald's or Pizza Hut or whatever, they started kind of adapting to local environment because that was the way to go forward. You may decide to compete or you may decide to collaborate. That's another strategy. So if you are very sure about your strategy and you're sure about no institutional voids, you will go in and compete, because you will compete from a position of strength. But if you don't know this ecosystem very well, you don't know how to handle the government, how to handle social activists and so on and so forth, you'll probably collaborate. You'll probably tie up with an Indian firm and then you go in and start attempting the market penetration strategy. You may accept or change the market concept. You may either come in and say, okay, this is how the market operates, so I'll create products and services according to this market. Or you'll say, no, I'll come in and change that market context and try and build a new product category altogether. Again, the most classic example in India has been Kellogg's trying to do that and changing the breakfast habit. Jury is out whether they've succeeded or not. Or finally, many companies have come in, gone, stayed back. You may decide to enter, you may decide to wait, or you may decide to exit, depending. So companies have come in, they realize they got the whole wrong strategy, they've exited. You may decide, okay, after all this assessment, I want to enter the market, or you'll say, no, the time is not right. So if you're a Chinese company now, wanting to enter India, you'll probably hold back and say, like, despite the institutional voids or lack of it, I will not enter the market right now because the ecosystem is not good, right? So I will probably wait. So all these factors, and where I'm coming at is in your business decision, particularly if you're playing in a kind of global field, then the context that I laid out for you and its ramification through the concept of information asymmetry and institutional voids will have a very, very big role to play in how you kind of take it forward. But just to sum up at the end of it, it's been a pretty long day for all of you, and I don't want to put you any further. I am also coming to the end of my time given to me. So I'll say yes, if your question is, will India and the world be intertwined going forward? It will. There's no escape. We are not going to be an island on our own. We'll have to exist with the others, and we'll have to compete with the others and beat them in their game. So there is no two ways about it. The world will continue to look at India as a lucrative market. Please try to understand our biggest strength is our size. And any country will, and that's why these whole trade tariff barriers and all these discussions that happen in the United Nations and other places, WTO, is all about, access to markets. And everywhere, I'm sorry to say, it all comes down to the economic size of it. It's basically like in our society, if somebody has access to money and is rich enough, then that that person will kind of bulldoze his or her way through it in society. Similarly, in a world economy stage, if you have the money and the resources and you have a great market to offer, you will command a huge amount of respect and you will command a huge amount of attention from the others who want a piece of that. So India is very well poised to get that attention, and India will continue to get it even in the years to come because of the sheer demographic dividend and because of the size of the market. I think given everything that we have, because of our size and because of the way our economy performs, India will be on a growth run. Now whether that percentage comes to 4% or 6%, trust me, when others are struggling to even get 1% growth in their GDP, 4% is also fantastic, 6% is fantastic. It may not be enough for India, as I said. India probably needs to grow at 8 to 10% to kind of ensure a per capita income distribution across the levels. But even that, compared to the world, we will continue to outgrow the world in terms of percentages. That's my belief. Of course, anything can happen going forward. And for us, the biggest differentiator will be talent. As I said, India is exporting talent all over the world. I think we read some estimate where about 18% of the talent across the world is actually kind of given by India in various forms, in some form or the other. I don't know exactly how they worked it out, but that's how it is. So some number which came across, that's how they kind of did it as a percentage of our population. But whatever be it is 18, 85, doesn't matter. But the fact is that talent provider capability and status of India is here to stay, and you guys will be part of that field. And hence, there is absolute optimism on how India will play out in the next, 30, 40 years. I don't think any of us can predict beyond 10 years now or 5 years now, but whatever be it, if we even have a longer horizon and if I have to take a punt out here, I think India is well poised to grow despite the issues that we are facing. So make no mistake, whatever be the questions, if I was Bob Dylan, I would end by saying that the answer is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Hear it, and you're likely to be. Thank you so much.
Before I make my unknowledgeable comments on Mr. Mukherjee's talk, I'd like to throw the house open for question and answers, if anybody has any questions.
So, if there are any difficult questions, I'll pass on to your faculty. That's always been my ground. You invited me on mail, you have no right to ask me questions. Like absolute betrayal. Okay.
It was fantastic listening to you. You mentioned primarily your talk talked about two theories, Akerloff's asymmetry theory and Paleppu's, the theory of gap. My question is a little bit controversial. Paleppu and Khanna, they mentioned that third-party facilitator or educator or whatever you may call it, they must be impartial. If there is some sort of partiality, then the entire valuation might go for a toss. We have seen in 2008 what happened with Moody's, wrong valuation of these derivative products. Now, do you think in India, the India in 2023, where there is no respect for the competition law, and there is a tremendous concentration of power, corporate level, third-party facilitator, will they do their job? And what is media's job, media's role to defend the democracy? Are you happy with media's role? We have seen that hostile takeover happened in recently. So as you have a long stint with the media. So what is your comment on media's role defending the democracy and hence India's growth?
My God, that's like two very divergent questions. But yeah, thank you for pointing out. It's my mistake. I should have mentioned. You're absolutely right. Why I'm a little influenced by the institutional void and the gaps theory, because both of them have been my professors in Harvard. So I picked up a bit from that. And if you are interested, there is a book they have written called markets, you'll find a bit of that institutional void and thing which I talked about from there. You're right. So yeah, I'm a bit influenced by that thought, but I do agree that most theories are based on ideal and utopian situation, and the practicalities keep varying. But largely, what you're talking about is if you start with the thing that everything can be bought or corrupted, then there's no starting point. So at the starting point, we'll have to assume, and since we are talking, I came from a context of foreign companies coming into India, this and that. They will come in with the hope that SEBI will do the job, RBI will do the job, Competition Commission will do the job. That will be a fair expectation that they will start with. What happens on ground, how the lobby happens, and we have seen that in the retail sector. Whenever there has been a big retailer who tried to get in, the mom and shop pop lobby, etc., completely deters those things. But then we'll have to just stand still, and there is no way out. So I'm saying, between the two, in a situation of where I'm talking A versus B, and there is an issue, trust deficit between A and B, your best hope is a C comes and adjudicates. Now, if that C is also corrupted, it's like we still go and vote, though there is a lot of controversy in the election commission, right? But we still feel that largely they are doing a right job, and there will be pockets where there will be issues, and we've learned to gloss over those issues, right? And we learn to live with some amount of inefficiencies. That will be there in any format and anything that we do. But largely, I do believe that in India we have seen with our courts, with all these kind of I would say independent bodies, there is still hope for justice even now. Largely, I won't say they are corrupt. Largely, they do their job. There will be pockets of corruption. It's bad luck if I fall in the turbulence of corruption. But principally, if you're asking me, I do believe in that. In the institutional voids and independent assessment, I would say is the best option available right now. If there's a better thing, I would love to have a discourse on that. No, I haven't come across anybody in the world who feels media does their job. Coming to your second question. So depending on which TV channel, newspaper or digital media you read, you will always feel that person has some amount of bias. And let's be very honest, media is run by individuals. So it's not a AI-driven thing, artificial intelligence who will do that. It's human intelligence. And human intelligence will always factor in an element of subjectivity. And we are very clear, we try to be at least in the way we run the media. I'm not saying everybody does it, there is a news part and there is a views part. And I'm not blaming, I've been in media, you guys are not me. But a lot of people extrapolate the views part on the news part and say, okay, see, this is what they believe and that's what they're coloring it with. So we are very clear about views pages is where I can say anything I want, that's my view, or my columnist's view, or my editor's view, which is particularly there too. That is the view. You may agree or disagree. But the news part, which is normally your page one, back page, post news, if the result of the match is 3-2 in a football match, then you have to put 3-2. You can't say, it was 2-3 and the guy won. It can't. So it has to be news. Or if a guy has been hit and run, as we are seeing this incident of late, by a car in front of Alia University, you have to report it that way. You can't say he's been hit by a bullock cart or he just collapsed in the middle of the road. Now, the issue is very rarely, and I'm not saying we are perfect. There are many times when often the views come in the news pages. And that's where this whole coloring happens. But every newspaper stands for something. And every newspaper has an opinion. A news house, right? It's a media house, whether it's television, newspaper. I personally don't believe in the theory of a media house without any opinion. It's so bland. Think of a friend you have who doesn't have an opinion. Everything you say agrees or doesn't say anything, you will not be able to have a conversation. At least we have grown up with, thankfully, professors and teachers who always encourage actually to read something which is differing with my opinion. And in my younger days, my grandfather used to come and give me the statesman. As I read that, one for English, one for having a different opinion or forming a different perspective. But fact is, whether media plays a role or not depends on which viewpoint you're looking at. Now, those of us who support a certain political discourse may find it uncomfortable if you find that your opinions are not reflected in the paper. And that's where the change has happened in the last, I would say, 10-15 years, where people want to see their opinion reflected in the particular medium that they're reading. And if it is not, then they're not doing their job. Now, I have come from a of generation where I would rather see a different opinion reflected in the paper so that I can question whether my opinion is right. I personally believe when I take out my media cap is I would read all news, views and then form my own opinion and go and vote accordingly. Right? I need not, and I don't think any media can influence it in terms of, at least if you have some level of education, you can't be. Whether media is playing a role, I think, if we are a functioning democracy, I think media has played a role. Now, there are commercial constraints also. Today, the thing you mentioned was a clear case of exploiting a commercial avenue to take over a company. Now, it's a fair and ethical, nobody is saying anything. What they did was absolutely fair and ethical. Adani took an absolute fair ethical way of taking over NDTV. There was nothing, no wrongdoing anywhere. Now, if you have left open a vulnerability, then you are exposed to, you will be taken on. Either they should have closed down on that vulnerability or they should have thought through that. But they couldn't. And now they've been taken over. Now they're taken over. Now, how Adani will play out their channel is something we'll have to wait and see. Now, Adani will go with his own philosophy. He is a different person altogether, and there's nothing wrong in that. And I would say, to some extent, the fact that we still vote and there's still change of governments happening, I think somewhere media is playing the role. Let us give it. It's like, are we ever satisfied with our boyfriends or girlfriends or wives or husbands? Yeah. But at a point, initially it was 7, 10, maybe 7, 8, 10 months. After that, there are always issues with that. So if we are never satisfied with that, why should we be so dissatisfied with media? Let's live with it.
Yeah, Mr. Mukherjee, you have spoken about India and the world from the business perspective. Now, how world perceives India, a lot depends on how India is being projected to the world. Now, post 2014, we have been finding a different approach, how India has been projected to the world. Recently, we have seen a practitioner being made the foreign minister. In the recent years, do you find India's projection to the world has got a dynamic change? What has been, what has been the practice post-independence? If it has been so, do you find that it is going to impact economically and from the business point of view to India? Because India appearing to be a giant to the entire world has got different ball games for the economy. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, you're right. Definitely projection exercise have dramatically improved, I must say. And I say this with due respect to the Narendra Modi government, that they're fantastic marketers. There's no two ways. If I have to learn marketing from one institution today in India, it's the government. And I say it with respect and with appreciation, not cynically or sarcastically, because that's their strength. The Congress has failed. They have done it, and they've done it election after election in everything that they do, despite any other country. If you had a demonetization of the GST debacle like we had, that government would have never come back. The government came back with almost an equal, if not better, majority, and they're doing it. So there's somewhere they're able to convince people that their intent was right. And I think yesterday's judgment also, there was a lot of discussion. The discussion, again, unfortunately went all over the place. But the fact is, never said demonetization was a great decision. They just said the procedures followed were right. So that's what the court will do. That's it. That's what was expected. I don't know why people thought otherwise. But obviously, the way it was projected was the court has validated demonetization. That's how it is. But give it to them. They have done that, right? That's what we are spending lakhs in IBS and other places to learn. And they do it very naturally. So that's the credit. So I think, yes, the projection has improved. I think it's become more professional what we are projecting. The only thing we did was Incredible India, and that's it. We only showed tourism, and that was the only thing that we did, which is projecting India. But having said that, it's not just last 6 years. I would also say, you have to give your due credit to Manmohan Singh and their government in the way they chartered the economic policies so that India could come to a position of strength. It doesn't happen in 4 or 5 years. Trust me, it doesn't. It is no matter what data you look at, and in which perspective you look at, if you really get into the details of all the data that I've given, all these changes started happening from 2011. If you see the data till 2008, 9, 10, 11, it's actually pretty bad. 11 onwards has started, which was 3-4 years before the Modi government came in. So I think, come what may be the politics at the bureaucrat level and etc., there is always a continuous journey, and some journeys, you kind of take your car at 80 kilometers per hour, and some journey you take 40 or 60 kilometers per hour. But the journey is there. I don't think anybody wants bad for India. We you never wanted to return. The respect and the etc. that you're talking about will, as I said, come from India's economic performance. I personally believe that. Forget anything. Come what may. You may have fantastic tourism location. You may come with great culture and yoga and do your World Yoga Day and all that. Nothing will come out of that. At the end, if your economy does well, you have a 6%, 8% growth. Every country will look at you. Every country will see how I can benefit from it. Now, for us, it's very important. It's like how great I am in the class and the quizzes I do and my participation. I'm just taking the analogy of. At the end, if your output and your scores of your semesters are good, that's what your employers will start as a starting point. When you go to the interview, they will start as a starting point. What has been your CGPA? That will be a starting point. Then in the course of conversation, they'll see, okay, what great guy you are and your other qualities and so on. But that is a starting point. And I think somewhere for India to sustain that growth and kind of come back, I think the economy has been wobbling a bit like many others. But to come back to a position of strength is very, very important. And if it happens, it's good to have technocrats like Jaishankar and you're saying, who are driving the road. It's absolutely the right way to go. And we wish there was more of that actually. And if that happens, then I personally am saying I'm very optimistic about India. And if you ask me my opinion, yes, India should do very well in the next 10 years. It's the conspiracy. All faculties are like questioning.
It's really a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry for my voice actually. It's like
No, it's okay.
So I have 3 questions actually. I was listening very carefully. One that you said our demographic dividend is India's strength and the per capita income is our weakness. That's what you said. And he said this population which is between 15 to 64 years is what we call as our demographic dividend that we talk about. Now in your speech what you have said is that the disparity in the income levels in this particular 15 to 64 years is what we are not able to capitalize. I mean, that's disparity in income levels, probably we are not able to... Employment levels. Okay. So, there you talked about one of the things that government should do is to increase the skill set or the skill levels. My question is, apart from government, what roles do the corporates have to play in that? That's the first one. You talked about that the manufacturing is one of the major key elements to drive the economy, at least for India. If you look at the majorly developed countries, and if we typically look at the sector-wise distribution of agrarian manufacturing as well as service sectors, it would be around 60 to 70% would be the service sector, around 10 to 20% or maybe around 30% would be there, the balance would be in the agrarian sector. China being an exception to that. So if China being an exception to that, is China different? And if they are so, what has made them different in that aspect? And what is your opinion on that? The third is somewhat different, and I go with your views and Ms.Vishaka Saraf's views. I mean, combining these two when she actually was delivering her speech. She talked about making a work-life balance. So when you talk about, and the very recent report which has been released by the Cantrell Ladder Happiness Index report, it was published in 2022. Which states that India is ranked 136th in terms of the happiness index, the number being Finland, followed by Denmark and Iceland. So when we say economy and we are growing by 6 to 8%, it only makes, creating wealth and making more money. And we are actually going backward in terms of enjoying our life. Where does this work-life balance actually feature?
So, can you repeat the last line one more? When you're growing at 6-8%, then what was the question?
And we are saying that we are actually receding in terms of the happiness index.
So
then the question of work-life balance, how does it come over here?
So, it's almost like Jasprit Bumrah coming in and giving you 3 bounces and trying to back and saying like, good. So, let me start with your one. I think, corporate sector, my politically correct answer is that should also invest in skill enhancement and skill development. But my very limited knowledge, maybe Vishaka can say better, is corporates do that, but mostly for their employees. And then we keep doing that. But there are some put it under CSR budget and will do something for others. But mostly for a larger group of employees that we are entailing, we're constantly doing, any good corporate will do that. Because classic is for us in media. We started out as a print company, moved into a television company, and now digital is, so we're now having print, television, digital, radio. Now constantly we are having to enhance the skill because the rhythm and the nature of these businesses are different. And you can't just tell a guy today that you're going to go into digital, you don't have the skill set, go. Because there is also a lot of things to gain from him for his years of experience in the company. So constantly we are doing it. I think every corporate is doing it, but is it enough? Is it to a level which will touch a 1.4 billion population? Given high unemployment levels, it will never be enough. We may do a few outreach programs and do stuff like that, but I think there, as you say, an idea that occurs to me is if there are more corporate and institutional partnerships, like yours or other management institutes, where corporates have an inherent nature to do skill development for students coming into the talent, then there can be a bigger ripple effect, if I may call it, in terms of ready talent to come in. I mean, I would say the technical skills you're already imparting, right? The softer skills and functional skills where people need to work for a year or two kind of pick up, and Vishaka was mentioning that as they go along. The culture of the organization and culture of working in an organization and team building and all that. There are opportunities in building a lot of these softer skills and functional skills, which kind of a private, corporate and an institutional partnership can enable. To my mind, that may be a way forward. But at a larger level, when you go down to the lowest level of society, many corporates will not have the time or resources to do that. And that has to be done, which our government has started under the Skill India program. And I think they're doing a reasonably good job in their outreach. We'll have to see the output of that whole Skill India. But they have also distributed it. They're allowing a lot of private players to kind of, register and participate in the Skill India program. So I'm sure. Right.
If I may, on the corporate.
Oh, please, Karen.
So, from a corporate perspective, I think more than the CSR, in the last 5-7 years, I have seen a lot of corporates invest time in building up skills. So I can speak about Tata's. They clearly believe in giving back to the society. So they do have a lot of skill development in rural areas. In Deloitte, we have something called the impacting, where each and every employee does something. We go teach students, we go to the rural areas, we do something that impacts the society. So and it's not just once a year, it's done at a very regular. I'm a part of world class in Deloitte as well. But as you may know, and coming back to your third question on how you project. So again, I think a lot of our Indians, I believe, are the smartest. They've been abroad. Now it's a time we're actually bearing the fruits of them being there. And we're seeing that impact coming back in terms of global and India intertwining. And the way you said projecting, I think it's also they bringing it back to our country. Our global CEO was an Indian. His name is Puneet Ranjan. And he was the first Indian ever in history to be the CEO of any consulting firm within the Big Four. Now, when he became the CEO, he said that I want to do something for India. So he met up with Mr. Modi and he said, I am going to build 75,000 jobs within India. Not necessarily recruit all of them, but I'm going to provide skill sets so that they can be recruited, and this was all done in the rural area. So I can tell you that a lot of corporates are doing it. A friend of mine, she had her own KPO in Bangalore. She quit, she went to Harvard, she came back. She's opened something called the Indie Village. Now she collaborates with a lot of corporates. And she set up training institutes in the rural area. Again, going back to what you mentioned about service being very urban, what we try to do is ensure that service is also moving rurally, with AI coming in, with a lot of stuff being, because even for AI, you need to teach the AI. The initial bit is when humans teach AI. That's when AI will then start teaching us. So you find her collaborating with a lot of the corporates to set up training institutes in the rural area to build up the tech capabilities, so that these people don't have to move to the urban areas, they can actually continue doing this because from a cost perspective it works out better for corporates, and we're also building skill sets. I also teach, like as a part of my role, I have to teach college girls who are in the rural area on certain soft skills on how to save money, financial accounting, etc. So a lot of stuff is being done by corporates. It's not there, we can't advertise this, right? We can't put it out on papers and say, hey, I'm doing this. But I can assure you corporates are doing it, and it's way above their CSR. It's not a part of the CSR, it's more, I think at some level, corporates do have a conscience, so they try to improve.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you so much.
Also, 2 years ago, Dr. Pathak will remember, 7th lecture, remember, was delivered by this gentleman who came from Delhi. He was the head of the Tata Trust. And his entire talk was exactly on the various initiatives they take. And it was it was almost a business venture that they use this to enable skills, and then in a lot of cases, those skilled people find employment in various Tata companies and elsewhere. So it's not like just charity, it's a commercial, it's a business venture.
Tata's stated thing is nation building. So whatever they do, it has to be contributing to nation. In fact, recently what you were referring to, the Tanera sarees that they have, is actually backwardly linked to self-help group women who actually do these textiles. So that's a classic and fantastic example. Just quickly on your second point on China, look, I have never been to China. I really don't. I'm not a China expert by any means. But what I look at when I look at the data, whatever I studied, and so 1990, the Indian economy and the Chinese economy was pretty similar. But given the next 20 years, they have surpassed us by a factor of 4 or 5. And one of the things people talk about is their emphasis on manufacturing, which again in that emerging market thing or in overall discourse internationally is that when you are an emerging economy and you have a larger population to feed, manufacturing kind of helps you distribute wealth in a more efficient way than services-led kind of a thing, because it's a higher skilled kind of a thing. So probably that's what we all know, that how they've turned themselves into a manufacturing hub. And we are also seeing now the geopolitical tension is actually moving that hub away from China to other places. Taiwan, India is another, seen Apple relocating and some other people relocating. So I think, I don't know whether China has been different in the way they have done things. Whether that's the right model, I don't know. But given that we have a similar kind of issues in terms of population and demographics and all that, probably the manufacturing route will help. But I am, as I'm saying, I'm not an economist expert and I don't know about China. But I think that's something they did right. And today they export all over the world, and it's a very pretty much they negotiate with US on their power of business and purely their power of strength. And that's what I feel pretty much that India can gain given the potential we have. So maybe a model worth exploring, but I'm sure there are pros and cons to it. We can talk about it. And she has already talked about work-life balance. I think there's nothing further I can say. I don't know much about this happiness index, to be honest. I'm told Bhutan is at the top, but I mean, Finland is top, and Bhutan is also, I think, well ahead of India. That's what they talk about. Most people can't see Finland on the map. Bhutan, they know. So Bhutan, I like to go, but I don't know whether I like to go and stay there and work there, but it's okay. So I'm not very knowledgeable, but work-life balance is important, but I have a slightly contrarian view to that, and because this concept is often used and abused equally. So it depends on your employees' maturity to understand work-life balance. Otherwise, every inefficiency is put under the life balance and not on the work balance. And to my mind, there are periods in your life when you need to work, and I really can't say that your work life, you start evaluating work-life balance from day one. Maybe you do, but you say that is work over life if circumstances kind of allow you to do that. And then kind of there is a time when you start making that ratio equal to probably start moving into retirement age when your life balance obviously takes over work balance. So yes, it is a tricky subject, but having said that, everybody is now working under constrained resources and chasing amazing amount of productivity with those resources. So it's very difficult to maintain. Of course, companies like Deloitte have very, very entrenched systems, and the big fours for that matter. And a lot of MNCs are also now. Recently, I had a friend in Accenture, and he said their CEO also said that they've introduced the concept of self-care. They said enough, and so they have given everybody a Aura ring. Aura is one of those kind of Apple, those fitness kind of rings you can call it, but it's not. It's a different company. So he was very funny. He said, like, we've all been given this rings, and this is tracking data on a real-time basis about, how much calories I'm burning, what I'm eating, etc. And it's feeding, I don't know whether it's feeding into Accenture server. He said, I also don't know that, but definitely the idea is that you should be self-aware of how your lifestyle is and what changes you need to make. But I found that was a very interesting initiative. I mean, that's really a way of sending a message to your employees to say that, I'm walking the talk. I'm not just saying self-care, I'm investing in it, and I want you guys now to utilize it and do something about it. And this friend is born and brought up in Calcutta, now based out of London, but I've seen him from a childhood day, and now when I see the lifestyle he leads and etc., a lot of these has been driven by the company. And he's now, really in the pink of his health, and he's never been. He used to eat like anything. And now it's all because of the company-driven self-care model. So I think, yeah, companies have a role to play. And I think work-life balance is important, but it's just that we'll have to manage it in a mature and efficient way and not let any of that get abused or used in a not so right direction.
And I completely
So you're
agree with Mr. Mukherjee. Work-life balance, I think the key here is balance. I think all of us need to know what that balance means. So yeah, I mean, I did a session with a professor, and my team has a lot of millennials. I think 70% of my team are Gen Z. So I learned the meaning of Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, what are baby boomers. I learned all of that, and very interesting concept he got out. So for us, we're all the older ones, so Gen X. And for us, work-life balance was I want to work 9 to 5, and then I want to go home, and then I want to be with my family and friends. This generation, apparently it's not the timing. For them, work-life balance is I want to work when I want to work and from where I want to work. I could work 12 hours, but I'm going to work from this place, and I might work 4 hours, then I might go do something, I might go to the gym, I'll come back and then I'll work again. For them, that is a work-life balance. So again, it's the way you want to do it. End of the day, companies are now looking for efficiency. They want their work to be done. You have to meet timelines. So you want to do it at 2 in the morning because that's what is your work-life balance. I'm okay. As long as my work is high quality and I'm getting the efficiencies and I don't have clients complaining, it works. So again, work-life, I think there's a change in the definition of work-life with every generation coming in. So, and you'll see a lot of companies and tech companies now as well, working on, even though COVID is over, they're still working on work from home for 3 days a week. There's still flexibility in work. So this is all a part of work life. Deloitte has a gym inside its office. So you want to go gym and come back and work, I'm okay with it. Yeah, just don't sweat around the entire office. That's my only ask. But yeah, I mean, so that's work-life balance. But it's your own limits you want to set while defining work-life balance. But you cannot abuse it.
I agree, because your friend was happy that this tracker has been put. I, for myself, would be bitterly unhappy if my office was tracking how much I'm working.
No, he doesn't know. We don't know whether it's tracking.
Yes.
He doesn't know
how much I'm walking or how much I'm eating every day. I would be very unhappy if my office was tracking that.
Mr. Mukherjee, it is really nice to listen to you. So, just one question. We have discussed about India and the world. So, there is a speculation that entire globe will be caught in recession. Because during the COVID-19 pandemic, all the governments, whether it is government of USA, whether it is government of Japan, they have almost spent 10%, 20% of their GDP as a relief package. Thereafter, inflation has become a global phenomenon, for which rate hike has become phenomenon for all the countries. Now, so all the nations, including India, are expecting to experience the stagflation phase. Now, what is your take on it? How India will survive in case, again, there is a global storm?
As I said, I don't think that will happen. I mean, there will be recession, but entire globe money, I don't know. That's like a Nostradamus kind of a thing. I keep hearing Nostradamus again and again for the last 10, 15 years. I don't think the entire globe will happen. Last year, the day before, I said the IMF chief said 1/3. Now, which third, I don't know, but 1/3. It's unlikely entire globe will get into, and stagflation, etc. They were talking of US, but that also didn't happen. They came out of it. India, I don't see, you'll see stagflation in the near term. Their growth rates are pretty high. Employment, those things are all, there are issues, but they are not serious enough for India per se. But So but I'm not in a very doom and gloom situation per se. These things are required. A lot of it is also marketing, by the way. You create this hype, this panic, and then it's like almost to me these are like forecasting exchange rates. I remember when things were at 72, 74 rupee a dollar, people were projecting anything, 80, 85, 90, and nobody goes back and asks those guys, what happened? Your projections went wrong. So projections can happen basis anything. My point, if you ask me, it's a very personal viewpoint. I hope I'm not proved wrong, but to me that global doom and gloom situation is definitely not there. There will be hardships for about a year. Some economies may struggle, and as I said, Europe, personally, I think Europe will struggle because of the energy costs and energy prices, because they are having to toe that line of not buying Russian oil, and hence already we are seeing huge spikes in inflation and all that. So there are pockets of turbulence that will happen, which will kind of lead to turbulence on the overall world ship, but nothing will sink. It's not a Titanic moment as yet. But these things keep changing, so I can only, let's say for the next 1 year, there will be hard times, but it's not a doom and gloom as you said. Those projections, to my mind, are, but I would not like to go by that, let's put it that way.
Any questions from the students, please? Mr. Mukherjee will go away with a very poor impression of our
No, I am not doing any poor impression, sorry, that's her word. But
in fact, these questions were given by the students to the faculty members. Definitely go back with the impression as to why Dr. Pathak is so popular. I would love a director like that. But no, thank you. I mean, if you have, great. If you don't have, there are better things to do after this, I'm sure. You want us to come to Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Mukherjee, we had scheduled 15 minutes for a Q&A session. We've crossed 35 minutes, so I think that itself proves how popular both the talks were and how interactive, and I'm not really going to mention much about that. No. But the very fact that they asked the questions, whether it is theirs or whether it was the students who prompted them, shows the, as I said, shows the acceptability and interactivity of the whole session. So, very pleasant task at the end, the vote of thanks. First of all, to both our speakers for taking time off from extremely busy schedules and spending so much time with us. Mr. Mukherjee, as I said, always be elusive till we finally got him. Vishaka, thank you so much, so ill and yet proved to be such a good friend of IBS and coming and spending time with us. To all my students who have come here and have been such an attentive audience. And thank you, students, for attending. Thank you to the Student Council, particularly, who have helped in organizing the function and have helped the faculty and the staff, everybody to do it. Particularly to the Digital Ambassador team. This talk is now gone live over YouTube and to all the IBS campuses and to all who want to hear it. We appreciate the efforts of the Rotary Sadan in enabling us to do a seamless program. And of course, my faculty colleagues, my staff colleagues have all helped to make this evening a success. May I request Ritika to please come and give a memento to Mr. Mukherjee. Thank you for being with us. And for you, Vishaka, please. Thank you so much. And our final thanks, of course, to the smiling gentleman through whose support. Thank you all. Please join us for tea, high tea. Thank you.
काम करते हैं